Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Selke. I'm the editor of winterscoming.net. Your name is Daniel Roman. You're the editor of winterscoming.net. This dog's name in the
Hello.
back is Scruffy. And together, we three are going to talk about all things sci-fi, fantasy, movies, TV, books, robots, lasers, swords, dragons, and so forth. Daniel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderfully. I'm loving the scruffy co-pilot today. You guys who are watching didn't see this, but he perked up right when you said the intro. So clearly he seems ready for today's show. And so am I. How are you doing, Dan? And how are all of you out there?
Yes. Hello, Martha. Hello, Kimberly. Good to see you all. We hope you all participate as we go on to our regular scheduled programming. I will consult the dog at various points to see his opinion. Scruffy, what do you think about being consulted? He loves it. Daniel, what
He's
are
a
we talking
fan.
about today?
Well, today we're gonna get into some drama eventually. But before we get there, we need to do our obligatory Westeros updates. But we'll eventually be talking about the state of the movies, what's coming in May, what we're watching now, all sorts of stuff. But first, some Game of Thrones stuff. So not a ton of news on this front in the past week, but I think maybe one of the juicier tidbits. Abu Bakar Salim, who plays Alan of Hull, however you pronounce it, I don't know. We'll find out in season two of House of the Dragon. He has been very vocally hyping up that season two is coming, and I kind of love it because I'm so conditioned from Game of Thrones that no one is allowed to say anything at all before the show airs. So it's kind of refreshing to see Abu Bakar Salim, just talking this up any chance he gets. So he talked a little bit about season two, and he basically said, I think it gives more of everything. With season one now done, season two is there to essentially allow you to play and allow you to show even more emotion, more drama, more sense of political angst. It's going to be a very wild season. Do you believe him, Dan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think two things. I believe him because we all know Six House of the Dragon is going to be a lot
Yeah.
more explosive, a lot more exploratory, a lot more characters, more places, more everything. I believe that. So yeah, I believe him. I also believe that Abubakar Salim is a good hype man, and he is like this
Hmm.
is like not a hugely known person, but he's like making a video game. He's in these different shows. He is making it happen for himself, and that includes being a showman and a having some salesmanship. So I believe those two things, that House of Dragon season two will be very exciting, and Abubakar Salim is on his way to celebrity status on the basis of his showmanship.
Yeah, it really is kind of fortunate. Excuse me. Kind of fortunate for House of the Dragon that they have him hyping this stuff up because you're right. So he is involved in the video game industry too. He voiced Bayek of Siwa in Assassin's Creed Origins, and he has or had it's out now. This new game that he and his studio that he made created this game, Tales of Kenzera Zhao, which is like a side scroller built on like African mythology that he's kind of dedicated to his father. So he's a really he also starred in Raised by Wolves, which has a really
He
rabid
did
fan base.
bother.
So he's kind of this interesting actor in that he's really well loved in a few different kind of fandom circles. Um, so yeah, it I think he's being an excellent hype man for House of the Dragon season two. I can't wait till we get like some actual interviews with him about Alan of Hull when he can actually talk about it. So yeah, Abu Bakar Salim, call us because we'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, we'd love
But
to.
yeah, that's what's up in House of the Dragonland. Not a lot, the show premieres next month.
Mhm.
So presume which is crazy because it's May. It's a happy May Day. Yeah, House of the Dragon season two is coming next month. Presumably we're gonna hear more and more about it throughout this month, but honestly, I almost kind of hope we don't. Like I feel like we're close enough now. Like, do you want another trailer, Dan, or do you think we've had enough?
No, I want more trailers. I want more things.
Okay.
Anything to raise excitement. Yeah, I want more.
Fair. Very fair. Well, one thing that it raised excitement for about a day in regards to Game of Thrones stuff. And then it was promptly shat on when we found out that it was not the exciting thing that we thought it was. So there was this report, I guess last week or earlier this week, that a Game of Thrones MMORPG was in the works. An MMORPG, for those who may not know, that's a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. So think like World of Warcraft or
I
Final
will.
Fantasy 14, those kinds of games. Um, so that was like making headlines, oh, that this game is in the works. And then we found out that it was actually a Game of Thrones mobile MMORPG. So it's on your phone and it's been in development since 2022. And Dan, I don't want to be just a downer, so I will field this to you. How did you feel about this when you found it out? Will you be playing it on your phone?
I felt nothing. No, of course not. No, I will not be playing it. I don't know. I'm just not interested. I have wondered why no one's tried to really go ham and make a proper big Game of Thrones video game. I mean, they had like a straight decade where it was all anybody ever talked about, but no one ponied up the resources to really make a big splash game about it. I don't know. The time is sort of past now, and we're still getting these little mobile projects, which are kind of not low effort. People who work on these things work very, very hard, but just not at the scale that I think is going to get people really excited. So, no, there's not really much here that thrills me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, same. I am biased against mobile games. I will say, like, out of the gate, because I play games on my television or a Switch or whatever, it's just not really what I use my phone for. So yeah, I'm not really intrigued by this whatsoever. But I do think it's an interesting question. Like, why haven't there been more Game of Thrones video games? Um, the most famous probably were the Telltale games, which are kind of
Right.
like choose your own adventure games. They're very, dialogue driven. You're just clicking through choices your character has to make. And thematically, that fit Thrones pretty well. But we've never had a game where you could really just like roam Westeros. And Scruffy's obviously agitated by it. For
Hmm.
those of you listening, he's nesting back there, digging around to find a good spot, it looks like. Um, just like all of us who wish we had a Game of Thrones video game to play, deep in our souls, we're doing that. Um, but I do think I feel like the hour hasn't passed. So on the
No.
one hand, I think it's hard for in general for game companies to do like tie-ins. I think tie-in games have a not like a bad rap, but there are so many mediocre ones and really not too many like excellent ones where it's like, oh, this movie is now a game and the game is incredible. You don't really see that quite as much as like I'm thinking of like some of the Avatar games. Like there was an Avatar game on Wii and
Mhm.
it was a thing that happened. Um, but I know that they're making Frontiers of Pandora as well, so they are trying that. But the reason that I don't think the hour is necessarily passes, I'm just thinking of like The Witcher, right? Like that was a series that was done, that like the
Hmm.
books were out, he wasn't writing anymore. And then a game studio was like, look, we love this story. We're gonna
True.
do our own story in it because the Witcher games are basically like a fan fiction sequel to the books, and we're just gonna do it justice. We're gonna make really good games, and I feel like that's the thing that a lot of the Game of Thrones video games are prospective ones are kind of missing. There's a lot
Yeah,
of like, yes, we're cashing in on Game of Thrones. There's not a lot of
exactly.
like, we're making a huge ambitious thing, and you'd love it if it was Game of Thrones or not, because the game's just so damn good. Um, do you
Yeah,
think we'll
it would
ever see
take
that?
you're right. It would take some talented developer who really wants to do it to get invested upon themselves to go at it. Because I
Yeah,
don't see a great one emerging just from, I don't know, kind of corporate producer types who saying, who
yeah,
can we farm out the IP to maximize our verticals?
exactly.
But there's no one like that right now.
Oh,
So, a lot of
get
things have to
to
line up that
maximize our
happen.
verticals.
So I don't think it's happening. I don't, and it might happen one day when someone decides to make it a thing, but it would take a push from human beings who really care about it. And I don't think, I'm not sure if anybody like that, at least gathering in a critical mass way in the game industry right
Yeah.
now. So I'm not too plucked about it. I'm happy with the shows and the books.
Yeah, I think that is definitely on point. And I do think there's an opportunity there, like, because
There is an
CD
opportunity
Projekt
there.
Red, well, CD Projekt Red was a really small company when they made The Witcher, and they've kind of made their name by making it and making it so good. Like if you replay the old ones, they like it was obvious that they were like still trying to figure stuff out. Just in terms of like the mechanics and the quality of certain things. So I'd love to see a studio that's like proving themselves making a Game of Thrones RPG. But yeah, that may or may not ever happen. But the one that was making headlines, it is a mobile game. Your mileage may vary on how exciting or not exciting that is for you. But that's not. Do you have anything else you want to mention Westeros related before we move into the juicy, dramatic hearts of our, of our show today?
No.
Oh, oh, it cut out for a sec. Okay. So the one of the things we kind of wanted to discuss, speaking of things making headlines and stuff like that, a few days ago, the Russo brothers, who are the directors of Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, they've since gone on to do The Gray Man, I think.
Yeah.
Were they involved in
They
Citadel?
were. Yes, they
Um,
were. They've
so
gone
they
on
they've
to doing some real forgettable crap.
they have so Joe and Anthony Russo did this interview with Games Radar Plus where they basically they kind of presented the shifting of the movie industry and basically came at this idea of like superhero fatigue, like what's happening here, and kind of framed it in almost a like no, it's the children who are wrong kind of way, like people's attention spans have changed, and that's why movies are struggling. Joe Russo, he's basically suggested that Marvel's woes are, quotes, a reflection of the current state of everything. It's difficult right now. It's an interesting time. I think we're in a transitional period, and people don't know quite yet how they're going to receive stories moving forward or what kind of stories they're going to want. There's a big generational divide about how you consume media. And this is where this is not quotes. This is where it gets a little head shaky to me. A little old man's yelling at clouds. So back to quotes now. There's a generation that's used to appointment viewing and going to a theater on a certain date to see something, but it's aging out. Meanwhile, the new generation are, I want it now. I want to process it now, then moving on to the next thing, which they process while doing two other things at the same time. It's a very different moment in time than it's ever been. And so I think everyone, including Marvel, is experiencing the same thing, this transition. And I think that really is probably what's at play more than anything else. I don't know what he sounds like. That was not an imitation.
Yeah, nor do I. Not a clue.
Sorry, Joe Russo, you don't have an iconic George R. R. Martin style voice, so you just get narrated like you're like anyone else. So there's a lot to unpack here. Dan, let me just pitch this to you. Do you agree with him? Is it the children who are wrong, or has Marvel truly not made missteps?
Oh, this is either him being polite or him being deluded. No, I don't think there's much to unpack here. I think it's pretty silly. This reminds me of a time before any of either of us were born, when TV came around and movie industry folks said it would rot the human brain, it would draw people away from theaters, it was going to be the end of intelligent engagement. It reminds me when movies came around, folks thought they'd take away from books. It reminds me when books came around. When novels were first getting popular, they were considered this low, kind of pitiful art form
Okay.
that would rot the human brain. How did they write that if we didn't have novels. I guess we had books, but not novels.
We had
It reminds
criticism.
me.
We just
It
didn't
reminds
have
me of
novels.
when the internet was first becoming a thing, and people thought
Yeah.
that was going to end world. It's nonsense. I mean, he might be being polite. Maybe he's saying that he's not trying to say that, yeah, Marvel just isn't making as good of movies as they used to anymore, which is kind of, I think, the real reason folk have kind of trailed off it. Because he was deeply involved with the Marvel franchise. So instead, he says that the kids are too preoccupied with the TikTok. But it's either he was being polite or he was just deluded. Because I mean, since then, the Russos, since making, they came up as like these sort of, I'll call them innovators. They came out like a show like Community, where they did like these really
Hmm.
out there stunt episodes. And that was what got the attention of Marvel. They directed The Winter Soldier, and then they were like the Marvel guys. And then
Yeah.
since then, like their next level has been these big sort of ass backwards corporate designed to be cinematic universe behemoths like Citadel, which is, I think, the funniest failure that no one talks about anymore because it really is it's nowhere in the
They
conversation,
put
even
a
though it
lot
costs
of
like a
money.
jillion dollars.
Yeah.
They're making like the Gray Man 2, which again, I don't see anybody talking about this. They talked about how
No.
AI is the future of filmmaking. That's a bit much. They didn't say that literally.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm inclined when they give a take on this, not to say that whatever the opposite of what they say is correct, but to look at it with some scrutiny, considering where they are. I do not. I mean, also the movie industry is failing. It's happening to everybody. Well, I mean, people spend $1 billion on Oppenheimer, a black and white 1940s biopic about a scientist in World War II. Barbie broke the
Yeah.
bank. Doom broke the bank. Godzilla versus Kong broke the bank. Wonka broke the bank. Challengers,
Surprisingly
which
good,
is,
Wonka.
oh yeah, I mean, people seem to like it. I didn't see it, but I
Yeah, it
assume it was good.
was a good time.
Right now, there's like a small movie, Challengers, in the theaters with
Hmm.
Zendaya, like a good old sex drama. We haven't had any of those in American cinema for a long time. No, I think it's hogwash.
Yeah, I think there are kind of two sides to this. And I'm going to read one other quote
Yeah,
because I do think
do you?
there is a strong element of hogwash here. But there's also maybe a kernel. I think there's a kernel of truth, but the way
Colonel.
they're presenting it is kind of disingenuous. So Anthony Russo also said he doesn't think this is superhero fatigue. It's just fatigue in general. And then Joe
Mm.
says, I think that the 2 hour format, that structure that goes into making a movie, it's over a century old now, and everything always transitions. So there is something happening again, and that form is repetitive, but it's hard to reinvent that form. And I think this next generation is looking for ways to tell their own stories that service their own sort of collective ADHD. Um, and yeah, I rolled my eyes when I read that too, because that is the sort of thing where it feels like old man yells at clouds a little. But I do think the fatigue in general is fair. I don't think it is specific to superheroes. I think it's a little more specific to like mediocre crap. I think
Oh
that
yeah.
it's disingenuous to present this argument of like audience expectations are changing without taking into account how like corporate oversaturation. So like there was a period of several years where there was always a Marvel thing
Yes, it was.
between Disney
Good
Plus
times.
and movies, like, and that's not an exaggeration. They purposely scheduled it so that there was always some other
Hmm?
Marvel or Star Wars thing in either movie theaters or to watch online. I think they oversaturated their market, and I think we've seen kind of these big mega corporations do this a little bit. So that plus the, I want it now, we need it now type of attitude. Well, we also have a very quick turnaround to streaming, and we've gotten rid of physical media. you know Gotten rid of, I use that like loosely here because don't get rid of physical media, please, but there's obviously been a push to lessen the
Hmm.
impact of physical media, which was for decades like a very significant part of movie and TV like revenue streams.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is, it's a little weird to just be like, people's brains and attention spans are changing without taking into account how like the way that studios are marketing and pushing their things is contributing to that. Um, it is interesting to me that like you made the point about Joe and Anthony Russo kind of like in these corporate situations working on these big corporate projects like Citadel, kind of
Oh.
saying how great AI could be and things like that. And it does feel a little like, Marvel. I've seen people point this out that like with the Marvel movies that they did, especially Infinity War and Endgame, there was such an enormous amount of like oversight because there's so many digital shots in that
Yeah.
that were like pre-planned. So it's not the same as like something like Barbie, where like, Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie and whoever else, like they cooked. They like were like, what crazy stuff can we do? And they just like thought of this stuff. The Russos had like some specific like shots and things like that that they were handed down saying, you need to do this, you need to do this. And it's almost like, are they the corporate directors kind of? They kind of seem like they're kind of becoming like a poster child for that in a way that works for them when they have really good oversight, like Infinity War and Endgame, which obviously Kevin Feige and everyone else, they had been building up to that for like a decade. But then you have something like Citadel, where Amazon's like, just make us a money making machine around the world, and it kind of bombs. So I guess you either die the hero or you live long enough to become Joe and Anthony Russo's current state. I don't know.
Hollywood goes in cycles. I mean, it always does.
Yes.
They're right that things change.
Yeah,
I just think bringing in like, and the kids have all the ADHD is a bit of a glib way to do it. Like
totally
Hollywood
agree.
in the 50s, different in the 60s, different in the 70s, different from the 80s, 90s, and now today we're going to do something new. We'll see something new. But again, if folk are willing to spend $1 billion to see Oppenheimer, I really like clearly you can make an event. It's just a matter of doing it. Fancy fans, right? It's about quality. If they make it, you have a better chance of doing it. I think
Yeah.
we'll enter into a new, I don't know. I'm not going to predict what happens next. But I don't there's definitely ways to get folk to want to see movies.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it right now. There's this other screenwriter named Joe Russo. He is
A
not
different
the
man.
different man. He gets confused. He gets hate for this Joe Russo all the time. He's another screenwriter. He's worked on Nightmare Cinema, Beer Run, Soulmates, so like different types of movies. Um, he responded to this because obviously
Oh.
he got tagged a bunch for this. And he said something that I really agree with. So here's his tweet. It says, in the 80s, MTV ruined attention spans. The 90s, video
There you
games.
go.
The 2000s, YouTube. The 2010s, today, social media and TikTok. Short attention spans have been the excuse for decades. Audiences only show up for one thing: movies they feel like they can't miss. So make better movies. And like,
You put it
I
way
agree
better
with
than I
that.
did.
Well, I mean, that's why he's Joe Russo, the acclaimed screenwriter of not Avengers Endgame. Um, yeah, he's totally right though. All those movies you just mentioned, Barbie, Oppenheimer, Dune Part 2, those were huge events where it was like, go see this in theaters because you may only get the one chance to see it in theaters and you don't want to miss it, or you want to be able to be in on the conversation, or the zeitgeist of wearing pink to the movies with all your friends. Like, there were all sorts of fun reasons why those movies succeeded, but I think a big part of it is they made it feel like an event instead of a forgettable afterthought you'd be fine waiting for streaming for. Um, so I feel like the so make better movies, like that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
Or make less disposable movies. I think there's an element of these studios kind of treating
Yes.
these things as disposable, and that makes the audience feel like they're disposable. Um, and that's not exclusive to movies. I was thinking about this today because of Beacon 23, which like Beacon
Mhm.
23, like their second season is out. Those of you watching, if you liked Beacon 23 and you didn't know that, they dropped a whole second season early in April without like a drop of marketing, like to the point where like I was looking out for this thing and I didn't even realize it had come out and I haven't just heard a peep about it. So yeah, slash rant. Do you have any more thoughts on this?
And the commenters are mostly in agreement. Yeah, I think the guy put it really well. Not Joe Russo was very insightful. Martha misses MTV.
Yeah,
What
me too,
back
Martha.
when I had music videos, we all do. But things do change, things move. And I agree that I think we'll see some giant hits this year.
Yeah,
I think Deadpool 3 will be a huge hit. Fantasy
fully
Fan
agree.
mentioned Despicable Me 4, Deadpool 3, Inside Out 2. Oh, Inside Out 2, right. And we can complain about like too many sequels, yada, yada, yada. But
Sure.
as long as they're good and they have some original spark to them, there are ways to get people interested. I'm really not worried. And he's completely right about every new decade, someone calling out how the kids are losing attention span. It's like an adult. I don't know, like when you pass a certain age, you just start being either fearful of or contemptuous of people younger than you, which I get because I'm
Yeah,
old, so I don't like kids at all. Um, but
yeah.
just to externalize it like that and talk about it openly, it just makes you look so detached. But it's a cycle of life, and I think we should embrace it. And
It is, it is a cycle of life. Yeah, I think Nicole says this pretty well in the chat. I do think social media has shortened our attention spans. Like agree with that, Nicole. But at the end of the day, if a movie is captivating enough, people will sustain and enjoy it. And we heard recently too, there was I think one of our colleagues shared this. And someone pitched Netflix a script, and Netflix basically came back to them and said, "Can you dumb this down more so that people could like be on their phone while they're watching it?" Uh, and it's stuff like that where it's like it's been a whole thing where it's been discussed how Netflix is trying to build like a second screen viewing catalog. They want
sure.
shows that are accessible for people who don't want to have to really pay attention to the show. And like that's fine for what it is. Like we've always kind of had that. Like soap operas were kind of a version
Yeah,
of that, like to a lesser degree, because like
I
they
don't
still had
know.
stuff going on, whatever, but they served a similar purpose of like multitasking viewing. Um, and yeah, I do think that there is such an issue of the studios devaluing this stuff so much that they've kind of made this problem for themselves somewhat. I really don't think it is. And I say this as someone who like doesn't really like TikTok because I also am old and every time I get on it, I feel like I'm being shouted at and I throw
Agreed.
my phone
Yeah,
across the room and need
I'm
to
with
go
you.
outside and listen to birds and stuff. But yeah, I do think that the way studios have gone about this has made this more of an issue for themselves. And I think blaming TikTok, like you said, it just makes you look out of touch. And
And there will be
yeah,
a correction. These things correct themselves,
yeah.
so I'm not worried.
Yeah, same. I'm not worried either. If the lesson for studios is make better, and that this doesn't necessarily need to mean bigger budget, because I think they've been kind of on a run with that too, where budgets have been ballooning, and we've kind of reached a
Yeah.
point, which again, Marvel is the easy example to point to, where they spent like 200 million on Secret Invasion or some insane amount more than that warranted. Um, I think that at some point, if this keeps going, like I hope that somewhere along the line, someone takes the lesson of like, you need better, like creatively better movies rather than just bigger, splashier, spectacular. Give Greta Gerwig, let her do whatever. I'll watch her Narnia stuff. It makes me a little nervous. It's coming to Netflix because I feel like it could easily be undervalued and not seen as much. But yeah. Anyway, I can stop ranting about this now. And hopefully Joe Russo will as well.
Well, is there anything else coming in the near future into TVs or the theaters that might be spectacular than what we've been talking about so far?
Yeah, I mean, here it's May 1st today. There's a lot of stuff coming out this month, and some of it may even be good enough to get the kids off the TikTok and to movie theaters or their televisions. So we're just going to run down a couple of things that are coming out this month so that you, our faithful viewers, listeners, and friends, can plan out your watch schedule for the next month. So first up, it is May the 4th, pretty soon. Today's May the 1st, so it's like 3 days away. And Disney Plus is releasing Star Wars Tales of the Empire. This is, I believe, an anthology series similar to Tales of the Jedi, but for the Empire. So think standalone animated short episodes, each of which centers like a different villain or a different period of Star Wars lore. So like I know there's a General Grievous episode. I think Darth Maul is in this. I see the High Inquisitor there. Um, so Dan, have you seen any of the Star Wars animated stuff? And would you watch this?
No and no. You just got to
Fair.
get up pretty early in the morning, get me set up to the Star Wars thing these days. Talk about, I'm not saying it's bad, but talk about a brand that's kind of been maybe a bit overexposed and sort of not enough high quality stuff. Unless people rave about it like they did Andor and I love it, I probably won't check it out.
Hmm.
But I'm glad if you love going off to the galaxy far, far away, you got a new place to go come May the 4th.
Yeah, yeah, I mean I agree with you on that. Star Wars is one of those brands that I loved loved forever. That I kind of just don't care as much about anymore because they've,
Nice.
shoveled out so much. And there are reasons why that happened during like Disney's CEO shuffle that they had to announce a bunch of stuff they weren't ready for. But um, yeah, I think Tales of the Empire does look cool. I do like a good Star Wars animated thing once in a while. I'm happy for the people who are excited for this because it seems like they've got some pretty cool characters in there. And Tales of the Jedi has been, I think, one of Lucasfilm's like more quietly well received Star Wars things. Like it is an animated anthology series, and that just like by definition is going to be smaller than something like Andor or The Mandalorian. But it seems like the people who have watched it have really enjoyed it, whereas something like Ahsoka was a little more divisive, and Obi-Wan Kenobi made people shed bitter tears
So
into
it's true.
their childhood R2-D2 pillows. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's coming on May 4th. Then on May 8th, we've got back to the movies, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the new Planet of the Apes movie. Um, I'm psyched for this one. I love, so this is, I forget who the director of this one is, but this is set, it's the same person who's doing the Zelda movie that is in
Oh,
the
is
works,
it?
I believe.
Okay, cool.
I think so. So
Oh, West
this
Ball, yeah.
I Westball. I believe this is set after the Andy Serkis trilogy of Planet
Yes, it
of the
is.
Apes movies. So it is that same continuity, which basically those movies. So Planet of the Apes, very famously, like the spoiler alert here for like a 60-year-old movie. The original Planet of the Apes movie, the twist is the apes are on Earth. So it's Earth, but in the future, it's ruled by apes. So the Andy Serkis movies showed us kind of how the apes started to take over the world. And this is going to show like the start of them as like a civilization taking over the world because we didn't quite get there in the Andy Serkis movies. They were really about Caesar, which is the ape played by Andy Serkis and his like
Hmm.
little tribe. So here we're going to see ape kings and apes riding horses, which is a thing they very famously did in the original movie. Um, I'm like nervously excited for this. Dan, are you going to see this movie?
I'm quite excited. I liked the first few. They were very, very well made. Um, when they killed Draco Malfoy because he's being a dick in that first one. He's hurt all the monkeys.
Wow, I forgot
Um,
about that.
really good movies. Yeah, I'm not sure I'll have. I'm probably well, maybe I'll give it a solid. I'm gonna rate all of these on the scale of hype. By the way, I'm
Okay.
gonna give this one a 7.
I think a seven sounds fair. I think this is a movie. So, Planet of the Apes, it's interesting because this is a franchise that has been running for decades at this point. That somehow,
Yeah.
like, it has had hits and misses. There have been incredible Planet of the Apes movies, and there have been some real stinkers. But somehow it isn't like oversaturated to the degree of a lot of other
No.
franchises because they just release them, you know, once in a while instead of every year it's a new planet, new apes. Dear God help us. So I think a seven or maybe it's an eight for me because I did
Yeah, you
really
seem to
like the
like
last
these.
ones. I do. Well, it's hard because the
It's
last
okay.
ones, and anything with Andy Serkis, I will like and probably enjoy. And he was really spectacular. This one has Freya Allen from The Witcher
Oh, it
series.
does. Is she a
She is
monkey
the
or a woman?
human. She is a human. Um,
Okay.
so she's a human who's being hunted by the apes, and they are the king of this whatever subculture of apes especially wants her for some reason. We don't exactly know why. So yeah, she is in this, and Freya Allen. It's exciting to see her get a role like this after The Witcher. Um,
So she's been
this
typecast as mysterious human who everyone is after.
correct.
Huh.
Yes.
What a
Hey,
fun
good
little
call.
niche for her
Yeah,
to fill.
yeah. She's been typecast as human MacGuffin. Um, she will drive your plot forward. So in addition to her, just because we're, sci-fi fantasy people, we need to mention this. It also has Peter Macon or Macon. That's Bordis from the Orville, plays an
Oh,
orangutan,
fun.
a sage orangutan in this movie. So yeah, I'll watch it.
Good. Hey, Robert. We are going over some of the big things to see in May. Glad you could join us.
Yes.
And Fantasy Fan is into both the apes and the Empire. One thing I'm cautiously excited about. I'll give this next one an 8. Is the next season of
Okay.
Doctor
Hesitant
Who?
8.
Yeah,
Oh,
hesitant
nice.
8. H8
Season
of
1.
see, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Is the next season of Doctor Who, long-running British sci-fi franchise. You all know what it is. Doctor rides around a police
Mhm.
box, solving mysteries throughout time. Because this show gets rebooted every few years, and this latest reboot seems to have some heat behind it. You got Nikuti Gatwa as the new Doctor, Russell T Davies back as the showrunner. Doctor Who, I've enjoyed off and on. And I said, of course, might be an on year because they seem to really be driving to want to get new people. It's on Disney Plus for the first time. They have a lot more money to work with. They sound very ambitious. And also, a drag queen named Jinx Monsoon, the only drag queen to win RuPaul's
The
Drag
only
Race
one.
twice, is going to play a villain. And I will watch that because I just think she's really talented.
That'll
So
probably be
yeah,
really
8
fun. 8. 8 for so Doctor Who is the thing you're most excited for that we've talked about so far.
so
I'm gonna
far.
put for me, I'm gonna say it's a 6, and that has nothing to do with
Sure.
this era of Doctor Who, just how little I watch Doctor Who. This is
Oh
the
yeah,
most
totally fair.
interested. Yeah, this is the most interested I've been in Doctor Who since Matt Smith became the Doctor, because that was in an era of my life where I watched just the tiniest bit more of it. Um, so yeah, that should be fun. And this is season 15. They're kind of rebranding it as season 1. There is very clearly
14.
a drive from Disney and whoever to,
Make it
like you said,
happen.
make it happen, bring in new audiences. It's as good a time as any to become a Whovian.
And they
Um,
are trying to call it season 1, even though it's either season 14 or season like 58, depending on how you reckon this weird
yeah,
eternal show. I'm also very, very excited. I'll give it a 10
yeah,
to the second season of Interview with the
nice.
Vampire, which, ooh, this show was excellent. Did you watch the first season? Yes, I forget.
No, I still haven't seen it. So my interview era is probably coming up. I just haven't gotten on the AMC Plus train.
I
But for
recommend it
this
quite a
show,
bit. So
okay.
again, most folk probably know Interview with the Vampire as this 1975 book by Anne Rice, who used to be like the queen of horror fiction back in the 80s and 90s. Um,
Mhm.
good story. Trio of vampires, two gay dudes and a kid, are just breaking necks and hearts all over the world. And the first season was very subtle, very spooky, very atmospheric. Stars Grey Worm there, Jacob Anderson as Louis, the main dude, main vampire guy. And I was very impressed that they managed to adapt the book in a way that didn't feel like it was rehashing anything, didn't feel boring, felt like sexy, felt dangerous, felt adventurous. And I hear the new season is good. I've AMC. Hi, how you doing? My name's Dan, and I I would love some screeners for this show. Let's reviews for season 2. You get 8 episodes. I will give A+ grades to every single one if you just give me them. You don't have to pay me any money. Just give me the episodes, and I will sing their praises from here to eternity. So I'm looking forward to that quite a lot
Cool.
on May 12th.
Yeah, so I have seen the early reviews for Interview with the Vampire just started dropping today. And it seems like it's getting a lot of positive buzz for season two. I've seen a few people say they really enjoyed the second season, but they did miss Lestat, seeing quite as much of Lestat, which obviously this
Well,
is one of
girl,
those
he's
things where
dead.
it's like, sure, yes, he's dead. Um, However you slice it, there will be less Lestat this season. If you haven't seen the Interview with the Vampire movie, haven't read the book, this is one of those weird things where it's like, how much or little do we spoil because the story's been out there in so many different ways. But it seems like they're going to do some interesting stuff. I'm excited to see what they do with Louis and Armand's relationship in the show, because it seems like the show is taking a lot of things that Anne Rice um, either implied with subtext or she just kind of did subtly, and they're really giving them the space to breathe in a way that is really resonating with a lot of viewers.
That's why it doesn't
Um,
feel like a rehash or pointless. Because you hear, oh, they're
yeah,
remaking this, they're remaking that, the sequel to this, sequel to that. And you're like, there's nothing new to say. But with this, there does feel like something new to say. It feels
that's cool.
relevant while you watch it. At least it did for me. And I want to
Cool.
see more.
Yeah. Yeah. So Interview with the Vampire, I'm going to give that one an 8 for me, just because I haven't seen season one. Solely
Sure, of
that's the
course.
reason.
Yeah.
Of the shows coming this month, I think that is the one that should most be on everyone's radar in terms of sci-fi fantasy shows.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of movies, there's a different one that should be the first one on everyone's radar that is going to probably make Joe Russo eat his words and cry bitter tears of frustration, because apparently that's just what everyone's doing right now. They're crying bitter tears for one reason or another. Um, so the next Mad Max movie comes out this month, May 24th,
No.
Furiosa. And
Is it a
this
Mad
is an
Max movie
easy,
if Mad Max isn't in it?
I mean, it's like Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
Ew.
So it's just because it's the world which Max will one day inhabit, or I guess he's alive, but right now
Oh yeah,
he's somewhere
he's
else.
off
He's been around.
taking orders from Tina Turner right now in Thunderdome. Yeah.
Yes, he is in Thunderdome right now. But yeah, so this is the prequel movie to Fury Road that starred Charlize Theron as Furiosa and Tom Hardy
Mm-hmm.
as Mad Max. This is Furiosa's like origin story, starring Anya Taylor-Joy. Has Chris Hemsworth playing like a real ridiculous looking villain. I'm excited to see
Always
his
fun.
performance in this.
He looks like he's having a good
Looks like
time.
he looks like he's having a blast. And Anya Taylor-Joy is always excellent. I think it's a really good casting to get her to do this movie. And George Miller, like, I don't know, Fury Road was one of the coolest like action
So
movies
good. So good.
in recent memory. Like they really went hard on filming that. They're like the behind the scenes drama of how that movie got made is fascinating. Sounds like it was a little less uh maddening or chaotic for Furiosa from the initial bits we've heard, but even still, like the filming of this, apparently there's an action scene in it that's like 15 straight minutes long that's they filmed over the course of, I want to say, like 78 days or something.
Ooh.
That is like George Miller said it's the biggest sequence like that any of them had ever worked on. So knowing that you have George Miller saying this, you have, Chris Hemsworth who worked on the Avengers and all those movies, it sounds like it's gonna be nuts. You're gonna go see this one, right?
Oh yeah, I'll see this one. I want again, studio. Hi, how you doing? I'm Dan. I would love to go to a screening of this one. It's possible. I'll try to get in contact with you. Look out for my
This is
email.
just your pitch show for
Exactly.
studios is what this has turned into.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Fury Road. I saw it twice in the theaters and then again on DVD. Like just things of like, I remember moments where it was like, what am I watching? Like the guitar
Yeah,
player strapped
that's the
on
one.
the the war mobile, or like the things where the
Yes.
guys are on like these giant poles being dipped into other moving cars and taking people from that and then picking them up. Like it actually had a decent hook for a story too, where these women are
Yeah.
trying to escape the sexual enslavement of Immortan Joe. If they can make all that lightning strike twice, yes. I'll give it a 9 because I'm slightly reserved about Anya Taylor-Joy. I'm not
Okay.
sure she would is the perfect person for an action movie, but I don't know. She could surprise me. I'm going to allow her to surprise me. Um, and other than that, I'm locked and loaded, ready to go. Bring it on.
Yeah. And so those are a few of the things coming in May. There are probably others we forgot. I feel like there's at least one other show that I'm forgetting, but these are five of the biggest ones to kind of be aware of.
How
And
could you forget
yeah,
the Netflix movie Atlas, where Jennifer Lopez plays a data scientist who doesn't like artificial intelligence, but she has to work with artificial intelligence in order to track down another murderous artificial intelligence?
indeed, how could I forget that?
Yeah, it could be great. You don't know.
It could be. Hey, no shade to Jenny from the block. It could be good. I kind of give anything. This is what happens when there are, when companies kind of dilute their brand a little bit by releasing a lot of stuff that is just mid or just okay or not very good. Like I kind of give anything coming out of Netflix at this point, like the side eye. And I've enjoyed like plenty of things from there, but there have been like their big release of last month was Rebel Moon. And dear God, there is not enough alcohol in the world
Oh.
to make Rebel Moon a good movie. Even though you can still have a good time with it, I think the movie is objectively bad. So,
Another thing I want to see is Megalopolis. That's Francis Ford
oh,
Coppola's new movie.
oh,
Some
nice.
sci-fi New
The
York
four
thing,
hour
but
one?
probably. I mean, if you direct The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, you will get my attention. And also, Nathalie Emmanuel's the main character, Missandei from Game of Thrones.
Oh, nice. That's cool. Hey, anytime there's a Game of Thrones alum, and I lied, that one is 2 hours and 13 minutes. I'm thinking of a different movie.
Practically a
So
blink.
practically a blink. What is that? That's like uh, uh, 2/3 of an Oppenheimer. It's nothing. Um, but yeah, so we're pushing time. So should we talk less about what we're gonna watch and more about what we're watching? What do you
Yeah, what are
think?
you watching, Daniel? What are you watching? Tell me.
What have I been watching? The
Yeah,
best thing I saw in the past week was Monkey Man,
I heard it
which
was
is
good.
it is really good. So that's Dev Patel's movie that he made. And he directed, he co-wrote it based on an idea he had. And I'm trying to think about how to word this without spoiling too much because it is a really excellent movie. And speaking of the, the supply chain things and how that contributes to people needing things now, um, it's out on streaming. You can rent it digitally already. It only
Oh.
hit theaters like when did this thing release in theaters? I had every intention of going to see it in movie theaters. I did
Hmm.
not get a chance to go see it in movie theaters. It came out on April 5th. So less than 3 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, it was released digitally before I even had the chance to go see it. So I watched it digitally at home because I could. And it is so a common question that I've seen get thrown around that's popping up in Google and whatever is Monkey Man like the Indian John Wick? Um,
Is
and
it?
I think th yes and no. I think that is probably about as good of a comparison as exists. And Monkey Man is aware of this. They make a John Wick joke like in the movie, so they're very aware of that parallel, but it's also a surprisingly deep movie in a lot of ways too. I think it kind of starts out with a lot of the crazy off the wall action stuff. It has a few smatterings of scenes like that, a few sequences that like will make your butt scrunch up because they're so uncomfortable watching the ways people are murdering each other. Very, very brutal, but it also has a lot of depth. It includes a lot of characters who are hijras, which is like the third gender in Indian culture.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of stuff with that around like the halfway point of the movie. Um, and I thought it was great. I thought it was great, man. So I
Cool.
wish it got a longer theatrical run, but if you liked movies like John Wick, but want something like that with like more Indian cultural influence and maybe a slightly, I hesitate to say deeper because like I like the story about the vengeance for his dog. Like I don't want to downplay that.
Oh,
But less about like assassin guilds and whatever, and more about like Monkey Man feels like it had a little bit more to say in
sure.
some ways. Um, it's definitely worth checking out. So
Yeah,
that's the main
that
thing I
looked
watched.
good. I mean,
You'd probably like it, I think.
when you're a good action movie, I don't think you need necessarily something to say as much
Agree.
as in you're like a drama. Like the flailing limbs of a John Wick movie, limbs akimbo, people getting their skulls cracked at every surface imaginable, in a way says more than a message ever could. But of course, I'm very happy for anybody who reaches for that brass ring and tries to include more content in the script beyond Keanu Reeves does something cool, as wonderful as that is.
Yeah, this has got both of those things. It's got a lot of Dev Patel does some cool things, and
Hmm.
then it's also the story. I'm being kind of cagey about it because I went into it not knowing what the story was, and I think that's a really good way to go into it because it kind of changes and becomes a different thing like part of the way through the movie in a way that I thought was really interesting. Um, but it's easy to see how like so the story with Monkey Man is that it was Netflix was going to buy it for 30 million and just put it on Netflix. And Jordan Peele saw it at some film film event and basically said,
Hmm.
"Nah, let's get that in movie theaters."
Yeah, good
Um,
call.
yeah, good call. Even though it didn't do super great at the box office, it's probably with its digital long tail now because it's already on digital. It will eventually make more than Netflix was going to pay for it, I think. But yeah, so that is the main one for me. I've also been watching What We Do in the Shadows, finally
Good for
catching
you.
up on season 5. That is fun as always. Matt Berry I just watched an episode where Matt Berry was unresponsive. The whole joke was he was trying to think of how to organize his
Mm.
books, and that came around at the very end, and I laughed a lot. Um, Dan, what have you been watching now that I've rambled sufficiently?
I finished Fallout. It was really good, which has been watched by
Yeah,
65 million people in 16 days, which means it's doing really, really well. Happy for Fallout success. Looking forward to seeing more. Still watching Shogun. I finished the Orville, which
nice.
you
Nice.
recommended that to me. So thank you for recommending that, by the way, because it ended up
Yeah.
being a good one. I like the final episode more than the penultimate big action one. It was kind of tuning that out a bit. But perhaps we can talk about that in more detail another time. I also want to recommend The Sympathizer on HBO, which is a thing they're
Oh,
dropping on Sundays. Really, really good. Kind of like a postmodern, um, timey-wimey show about the Vietnam War. It centers all these Vietnamese characters who are expats living in the US, but they're still kind of attached to their own country, and they're like South Vietnamese
gotcha.
after the fall of Saigon. So there's a lot of good questions being asked and posed and explored about identity, about war, about patriotism. And Robert Downey Jr. plays five people. And I didn't know why. I think he plays all the white people who have speaking roles now that I thought about it. I'm
Oh,
pretty sure.
interesting.
So I'm like, why is he playing five people? Then I'm like, oh wait, I think every white character who has a name is played by Robert Downey Jr. So
Interesting.
maybe it's a joke on like we all look alike. I'm not sure. Um, but it's
Huh.
fun.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a
Well,
really good
with
show.
if it is that, which now I'm curious, obviously something like that's intentional for a reason. Um, it is kind of funny. I don't know why. It just makes me think of so he in Tropic Thunder, he played
Oh
a
yeah,
an
I remember.
actor who yeah, you remember. The joke of that movie was he was a method actor and he basically dyed his skin black to play a black person in a movie. And it was like controversial at the time, but like the movie did what it did on purpose. Like that was they make fun of it in the movie. Um, So it's interesting, like it almost feels like this is the opposite end of the spectrum for him on that joke, if that's the case. Um, so I'm curious. I want to know more now at this point. You've piqued my curiosity.
I recommend the show very much. I'm really, really enjoying it. And that's it.
Cool.
Sundays at 8 p.m. on HBO or and Max. Do you want to blast through a lightning round, Dan?
Let's blast through a lightning round. I think we've got just enough time. And if those of you listening or watching, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the world famous Wick News Lightning Round, where we go through 8 stories, more or less, that we didn't have time to get to in our main show, summing them up in 20 seconds each. Otherwise, we are buzzed into infamy and shame by producer Richard. So Dan, I think I'm going to ask you this first one whenever you're ready.
Go ahead, hit me.
Okay, so a new full cast Harry Potter audiobook with 100 voice actors is coming out exclusively on Audible.
Makes sense. They're building up to a big new Harry Potter TV series. So I guess it makes sense that they would want to get folk interested in the brand again. Yeah, there are already some beloved audiobooks from Stephen Fry and then an American man whose name I forget. And the question is like, how do you do something different? I guess hiring 100 different actors to voice all the characters is something different.
Yeah,
All right,
I
Daniel.
guess.
I'm excited. I might partake of this. Not gonna lie. The Lord
Yeah,
of the Rings trilogy, the extended edition, are coming back to movie theaters in June from Peter Jackson. Will you see that?
yeah, I'm pretty tempted to get tickets for this too. I think they're coming out only for like one day each in the middle of June, and it's in select theaters. So Fathom Events is the name of the company doing this. Look it up online. You can already get tickets. It's the extended remastered version that is on the 4K UHD release of the movie. Um, Lord of the Rings in theaters, that's an experience. See,
Hmm.
this is the thing, studios. Make it an experience and we'll come to the movies. Um, gosh, I had a funny story about a thing I watched and I forgot it, and now I'm sad. Forgot to share it. Maybe later. Okay. So Netflix, speaking of Netflix, they're producing an hour-long live-action Scooby-Doo drama.
Sure, why not? Um, sure, why not? Sometimes these reboots can work out, but I mean, my first thing is to say that's stupid and nobody wants it, but I don't want to cast aspersions too early. It's happening. Ruh-roh. So if you like it, enjoy. I'm done. I don't
Netflix
think
will
anything else
get
to say.
away
Cool.
Netflix will get away with it in spite of you kids.
Daniel, Outlander is filming
Yes.
its eighth and final season, and even the cast doesn't know how it ends. And that's before we get our new spin-off, Blood of My Blood.
Yeah, so Outlander in the midst of its final season, Catriona
Worthy.
Balfe, who plays Claire Fraser, basically said that even though they're filming, even though she's a director, even though she's an executive producer, basically the writers are keeping some elements of the ending under lock and key. So not even the cast knows how it's going to end. Blood of My Blood just added 6 new cast members. That is filming right now as well. So it's going to be a big year for Outlander next year. Um, all right. Oh, here's one for you, Dan. So Invincible, Prime Video's superhero, bloody superhero show. Uh, it has already cast at least one major villain for season 3, either Thrag or Conquest. Who are these people? Should we be scared?
I haven't read Invincible, but I am excited to see more of the show. I love this show. I think it's really powerful and punchy superhero drama, animated drama. And I'm glad they're moving on it. I hate waiting years and years and years. And I said before, I want people to just make things quicker. And I'm glad they're making this quicker. 2024,
Yeah,
December is my
come
hope.
on.
Speaking of more Outlander, Daniel, Outlander actor Brian McCarty has died at the age of 59. He played a lord whose cows helped Claire break Jamie out of Wentworth Prison in season 1.
Yeah. Sorry, this is
Why are
sad
you
news. The
laughing?
laughter was
Yeah.
I was laughing because the cows is such a ridiculous thing. That was a note for me to remember who it was. Yeah, so Outlander actor Brian McCarty has passed away. That is sad, not funny at all. And he appeared in season one and was his character helped Claire break her husband Jamie out of Wentworth Prison, which if you've seen the show, you know what that is. It was a very major set piece for Outlander. So our thoughts go out to his loved ones. Under the buzzer, producer Richard says, "Our lightning round is too mighty. It has broken the buzzer. The buzzer has been buzzed." Okay, so Dan, Bethesda boss, uh, Todd Howard says New Vegas will play into Fallout Season 2.
Yeah, Fallout. What a good show based on these video games, but a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Is getting a second season, and at the end they teased a place called New Vegas, which is like old New Vegas, which is like old Las Vegas, but now it's post-apocalyptic zombies up in it. The game's beloved, and of course it'll be into the new season. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure that'll be around and along in a while longer, like 2025 or something, or 2026 even. But sooner the better.
2026. Oof,
Yeah. And finally, Daniel,
brutal. Yes.
Hugh Howey, the author of the book Wool, has seen the second season of the TV show Silo, an Apple TV Plus sci-fi show that I know that you liked a lot. And he says
Yes.
it's one of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah, Hugh Howey out here hyping up Silo. Silo wrapped filming in March. Something that I think is even more exciting about this is so this was on Threads. Someone commented and was like, "Oh, I can't wait to watch it in 2025." And he responded and was like,
Hmm.
"Maybe sooner than that." So maybe we'll get Silo season 2 this year. It sounds like it is a possibility that we'll get Silo season 2 this year.
Well, Robert Harris
Yeah.
is all about it. And if you're all about us, feel free to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe here on our YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, YouTube Music page, wherever you listen or watch us, because we are available in podcast form and in video form. You can see our faces or hear our voices. Either way, you're welcome. And please come back for our live show. We do this every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. at Central Standard Time, 3 on the East Coast, noon in California, and 1 o'clock in the mountains. I'm Dan. He's Dan. Everyone out there is not named Dan, but could be. We have been very happy to take you on this journey throughout this last hour. Hope to see you again. And from Dan, and Scruffy, bon voyage.
Take care, all.